Hello, everyone, and welcome to the final episode of Dojo Live this week on June 30th, 2022, coming up on the holiday weekend. Happy July 4th. My name is Kim Lantis, and it's my pleasure to be with you today. Joining me is my co-host, America Guerrero.
Hey, it feels like a Friday. I don't know why, but hey.
Hey, I know why. Somebody's tying knot this weekend.
Yes, that's true.
Not me, America. Or America.
Yeah. Hi, everybody.
Perfect. So today's guest, Shavon Lindley, CEO of Ion Learning. We're so happy to have you today here, Shavon, and we really look forward to our conversation. Thank you for being with us.
What a pleasure.
Thank you so much. Awesome. So today we're going to be talking about talent development. But before we get into that, we'd love to get to know you a bit better. If you could please share about yourself, who you are, your background, what makes you tick, and ultimately kind of how this led up to Ion. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thanks so much. Yeah. So I grew up in Oklahoma, born and raised. I went to school at University of Texas in Austin, and I got a degree in mathematics and ended up in the financial services industry out of school. And I also grew up in a household with a Muslim Iranian father and a Christian American mother. And so I always say that inclusion was in my DNA from the very beginning, really trying to discover how to honor and recognize and value people who seemingly have very differing points of view, and to learn how to find what is similar against these people who seem so different. And that was an evolution over time. But I followed my father's footsteps in wanting to be an entrepreneur, and I ended up building a financial planning firm. But in the beginning, I was just a new hired trainee in a Wall Street based firm, and I was the only woman in the firm at the time, and was taught how to cold call and help people and help them with their financial needs, and ended up discovering that I was really good at that. And so within 2 years out of school, I was a top performer for the firm. And like most people who are top performers, they get promoted into a leadership role. And so I was asked to start hiring and recruiting and training all of the new hires. And I thought I was going to be really good at it. And I ended up being absolutely terrible.
You're like, cut, get me back on the cold calling.
Nobody that I trained stayed with the company. And all of this confidence that I thought I had and who I was meant to be as a leader and my legacy from my family was just like completely destroyed. And so I really started to ask questions like, what am I doing that's wrong? And my managers were telling me I wasn't doing anything differently from them. Side note, they were all men, and I was leading like them ultimately, which was the problem. I was leading super inauthentic to who I was, but this would take me many years to figure out. But in that moment, I had to go and find that out, and it set me out on a journey. And at the time, I happened to also be the host of a financial talk show on ESPN with a couple other colleagues, and we turned one of the segments of our radio show into this executive interview series where we brought people on air to tell their story of how they were able to grow in their career. And this was the first time I had a fancy title next to my name, like who doesn't want to come on ESPN and tell their story? So anybody that I would interview would come on, that I would ask would want to come on air. And so I did. For 3 years, we sat back and interviewed over 150 executives and figured out that there were 6 leadership principles that were in common amongst all these diverse people that got them from one level to the next in their career. And they all said that it didn't take a 25-year career to learn them, that you could learn them really quickly. And so it just became, I at that moment, my life's purpose came in, and it was, you need to, how to scale leadership development principles that in a way that an organization can deliver it to people who are at lower levels in the organization where I was stuck. So where typically other underrepresented talent are stuck, all at the bottom. So all this great talent development training programs that are for executives and managers and all of that stuff, like, it's great if you get there, but if you never get there, how are you going to get it? And so that's where the very, very early days of where Ion came from.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for sharing your story. I love it. Let's talk then about ION. I'm assuming you're intertwining these 6 principles into what you're doing, but what is the problem that you're solving at ION and how are you going about doing that?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, originally it became around wanting to scale leadership skills, but then ultimately it was like, how to scale any sort of training and development. How do we do that effectively? And especially at large scale, because when you talk about scalable learning, the only thing that companies know is I have to give them access to an e-learning platform that has 5,000 courses on it.
Yeah.
And they say, good luck, train yourself, you know? And less than 15% of people complete online learning courses, literally less than 15%.
15.
Yeah. So this is a over $300 million business industry, of which 85% of this money is wasted. We're still stuck at the bottom. And it's like, what's missing? So what ION does is, what we did is we interviewed all of these learners and we said, why aren't you completing training programs? And it came back to 2 simple things. One, I have no accountability to do it. And I wish I had a support system of colleagues that I could learn with and talk about this with. And so we were like, we can do that. So ultimately, ION, and it's official, is an enterprise peer learning experience platform. And we specialize in working with, mid to large size companies that are typically experiencing some sort of big shift. Well, we all experienced a big shift with the pandemic. We all went where we have a hybrid remote employees, and that's not going anywhere anytime soon. And companies are used to training people in a physical classroom. Well, you can't do that anymore. So they've been putting people into webinars or giving them access to e-learning, but learning is just, it lost its humanness to it, right? And so what we do is we've created this new model of corporate education where we place employees in an organization into peer learning groups. And these 3 to 4 people are placed together into a group optimized for diversity. So they're with people they normally would never get to meet with. And now these people become a team and they have to work together to complete courses on our platform over time. If anybody in this course doesn't do the content, or if they do not meet with their peer group, nobody moves forward. And so we're the first and only platform to use accountability as the mechanism of which someone progresses. And because of that, over 95% of people complete courses on ION. And so we've been able to solve all
9.5. So you went from 1.5 to 9.5, 80% increase. Okay.
Absolutely. And yes, that's an impressive number, and the industry's never done that before. But what's more impressive is that 38% of people who said that they were going to leave that company that year decided to stay because they had people at work that they cared about. And now that they're being equipped well to do their job, they had hope in their organization. And that is what people are trying to figure out. How do we get our people to stay? It is a talent shortage out there. People are struggling to find it. They're paying premium prices. They don't know how they're going to retain. Now they're starting to lay people off. It's like, that's what I'm here to talk to you all about, right? Is people and investing in people and what that does and how that can help in both an expansion and in a recession. And so that's what I'm excited to get an opportunity to share with you all today.
Awesome. Well, you did a really great segue yourself into the title that you chose today. What is the title of today's show, America?
Sure. So now we're going to talk about how investing in talent development can save you in a downturn. So please, Shavon, share more with us about this.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I was inspired when you all asked me to come on to what is it that I want to talk about? And I don't know about you, but just every day I'm seeing a new article about a company who just laid off a whole bunch of people, right?
The great resignation.
Well,
although we had one Dojo Live guest say, there's no great resignation. People are just leaving shitty companies.
now I'm talking about companies are laying off,
right?
Because they are trying to get ahead of this recession that we've entered into. And this may be a US recession, this may be a global recession, but the natural impulse is to cut costs across the board, postpone projects, reduce discretionary spending, marketing, employee training, freezing hiring, reducing headcount. And so people, when my financial planning thing, when it would happen to be a recession, people do the same thing. They pull their money out of the market. The market's already going down. It's a bad idea. You have to do the opposite of what you think you need to do, because your brain is trying to protect you from this fight, flight, and freeze. Right now it's telling you to get out and save yourself. But if we can calm ourselves down and look at history and study the past 3 recessions, Harvard Business Review did an amazing study after the prior 3 recessions of 4,700 global companies, and discovered what scenario puts you in the highest probability of being a winner after a recession. And so when you look at it, those that cut costs and deny all of these resources to people in an aggressive way, they're at the lowest probability of succeeding. 21% they have if they decide to do that. Now, the other side of this is like people who boldly invest and like swallow up a whole bunch of companies and grow and expand super, super fast. They do a little bit better, only a 26% chance of becoming a better leader, but it's really the delicate balance in the middle. And when we look at who makes up companies, they are people. This isn't just an asset. It's not this cup. It's not, this computer that I am or this machine. It is the humans that are operating this organization. And we are emotional beings that have gone through a significant amount of trauma these last few years. It's significant. If you all aren't trying to figure out how you're going to survive today, I don't know. Everybody I know is just like, how do I keep my family well? How do I keep my kids? How do I help my family? That's what we're all trying to figure out while doing our work. And so to add on top of that, a recession is going to be extraordinarily challenging for all of us, especially our mental health. Recessions are short-lived. Our health is a lifetime of a experience. And so we have to really think about how can we invest in these people, because they may stay short-term during a recession because they need the job and they don't want to go out and potentially go find another one. But the second the market improves, they're going to know how you taught them. Their morale is going to be so destroyed that they're going to leave, and you're going to have to pay more. And it's going to take you twice as long to find it because everybody else is going to be looking for talent then too. So what I want to explore with you all is what are innovative ways that we can look at thinking of investing in our people differently.
Yeah, thank you. And I mean, I think there's probably a handful of innovative ways, but I think what you've brought the attention to is it has to be investing in people. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but let's talk about that word investment, which might cause some freeze, flight, or fight with some certain leaders, because I think when we see investment, also it always means dollars, and there's risk. And I think maybe the question of how much, right? Like when we invest, does it have to be something huge, or like how little is too little? How much is too much? Is there no right number? What does that word cause in people, and how can we sort of get over that?
Yeah, right. Resources are time, money, energy, right? So there's all of those things ultimately hijack us of our resource, of however you want to quantify it. And so when we look at, people don't need a lot. They just need to know that you care and that you're communicating to them around it, and you're providing them with a support system so that they can have relationships in the workplace.
Even if that's just 3 or 4 people, like your ION group.
Yes, absolutely. And so when we want to look at this, right? If a company is saying, okay, well, I've got to train let's say they are bought into this idea of like investing in their people through training, okay, and giving them resources. If you're training people in a physical classroom, you have to take them off the floor. You have to put them in a room. You got to potentially fly them there or drive them there. You have to feed them. You have to have a facilitator in the room. There's a lot of barriers in that model. So I can understand how people are like, not going to happen. Not going to do that. So we have to just look at creative ways to do this. And what's going to save a company is going to be, because it's not one thing that's going to save a company. And this is the solution for everybody. But I guarantee that the people within your organization that have been there, if we can get them to collaborate with one another across departments, not sitting in their silo at home behind their work computer, only working with their manager and their direct team. But if we can get finance and engineering and marketing and sales to be in an environment together where they can learn from one another and they can explore in a really psychologically safe environment what it is that they do and how they can innovate whatever challenges, that's where the transformation happens, is just creating that environment. So unfortunately, it's been really challenging to create those environments in the past, but not now. Companies are equipped. We have all the tools and resources now, so there's no excuse.
I have a question. I know that sometimes as an employee, you can feel a kind of rejection with mandatory trainings. I have seen that. So
I've experienced it.
Yeah, so I never heard that you could do a training with the team like inside in university. Yes, I have done that, but in the team with my job, is there like a negative impact at the beginning and then they kind of like it through the progress, or how is the impact?
Yeah, well, when us two just met today, right? And we found very quickly something to have a connection in. So we found something that we found similar, even though we live in 3 different parts of this world, right? Relatively quickly. And we're able to kind of bond form there. This is what happens in small groups. This does not happen naturally in a one-on-one setting, because it's very much around like this not being an awkward blind date. There's research has happened in a groups of 3 to 4. When you get 5+, it becomes overwhelming for the brain. And when it's one-on-one, it becomes, we had to have gone to the same school or did something similar. So the group dynamics has been studied for centuries. And you're right, schools have been doing this since the dawn of time, right? Study groups in school. But in the corporate classroom, we cram them full of information and then we tell them out the door. So compliance and requiring has been a way that we get people to do something, but they do it with a chip on their shoulder and they're annoyed. Don't make me do it. So ours, we look at completely optional training, right? Don't require it. You want to learn some new skill. You've said you want to grow. We just don't have accountability. Now we are accountable to each other, to doing this, to following through with what we say we want to do. We are just helping create and we're just a facilitator of that environment at scale within an organization, but the organization is going to help drive what it is that we want these people to learn. But it's going to be so important throughout this recession that we create a internal network that is cross-departmental, where we can activate and extract the ideas that are going to save this organization. And that's what we want to help activate for organizations. And you don't have to use our platform. Like, we're a small startup ourselves. We use our platform because we have it. But when we coach other companies, putting people into a peer group is really simple. And you can give them as little as a book to follow. Like, let's say you have a book club and you want them to read this book, break it into chapters, and then have a peer group session after every couple of chapters. It can be that simple, or it can be as robust as a manager capability development training program, or an inclusive leadership development training program, or a hard skill set around technical training around how to do your job. Whatever you want to train, just make sure that there's that human connection piece there and the support systems that we need for us to navigate these tough times that we're ahead.
For sure. So talking about Ion Learning, your platform in particular, what does the dynamic look like as a team? Like, when I'm logging on, what am I experiencing? What am I seeing? How am I prompted into my peer groups, etc.? How have you made this work?
Yeah, well, so we have this 3-step science-based process that our platform is based on, called Ask, Match, and Launch. So an ask, it's around asking the right questions to make the right match for these peer groups. So the first experience that a learner has is they complete, it's called Rhythm. It's our group matching algorithm survey that they go through, and it takes less than 5 minutes, but it's 21 questions where we figure out all of these different dimensions of your diversity. And our algorithm uses that to inform how these matches are made. And so every time you learn something new, you go through rhythm again. So that way it places you into a new group, and something in your life may have changed. You might have a family now. You might live in a new place. You might have changed gender identities, right? So you get an opportunity to change your response every time you learn something new, and then you get placed into a different group. So you're constantly growing and expanding. So step 1 is ask the right questions. And then step 2, and you're matched into a peer group, and your this peer learning group is now your team. And so how that works is you get first an introductory email introducing you to your peer group, and who the first facilitator is going to be out of this group, because there's no expert guru mentor in there. You are in charge of self-facilitating in your group. So what our platform does, though, to help here is it provides facilitation training, and you get discussion guides. And so you don't have to worry about what you're going to say. We give you a script.
We'll train you to be a trainer.
Yeah, well, that's what companies want. We all want to be a leader, right? And you just need to be put in a safe environment to practice. So we just give you that opportunity to do that. And so now you're in this peer learning group, and you've been equipped, and you're ready to self-facilitate, and you've completed whatever the course content is. So if it's micro e-learning, you've watched a 30-second video, you've done an activity, maybe it's a live training or a webinar. Companies can author their courses however they want, but what we require is the peer learning group environment that happens after a module of content.
That's really the differentiator that you've seen.
Yeah, absolutely. So how the experience is for the learner is they know exactly what they need to do in what order, which seems really simple. And of course, that's how learning platforms would be made. But I will tell you, it is not. People have no idea what they have to do. I don't know who designed these other companies, but it's like, just tell me in a linear fashion what I need to do and in what order. So we make that really clear. You can see where your other peer group members are. So their icons show you where they're at. Nobody hides at Ion. You can't hide.
You're either like high five or like, hey.
Yeah, and then you can communicate with each other, of course. And then they have the synchronous moment where they have their discussion. And it's literally, turn your webcams on Zoom or whatever your platform of choice is. And then once they are done, they certify that they met, and then it unlocks the next module of content. But nobody can get to module 2 if they don't do all of module 1.
All right. And there's no cheating. How do you prevent cheaters? America, I didn't do my reading. Can you please answer the questions for me?
Yeah.
Yep. It's pretty clear if you show up to your peer group and you haven't done the work, nobody wants to show up and look like they didn't do it. So people do it.
I love it. That is it. And it's funny, like you mentioned, accountability. It's something that I don't think you you don't grow out of that. Right. There is definitely there's this peer-to-peer pressure that I think we experience throughout our entire lifetime. About Ion I see that you've got some course catalogs available, things like very important things like inclusion and allyship, and catalogs that you provide for your users, for your clients. So let's talk a little bit about those catalogs, and then also the ability for your users to create their own material.
Yeah. So we found very early on that in order for people to build trust with this methodology and build efficacy with it, we needed to get them off the ground really quickly so they could experience the Ion method for themselves. And so we started building courses from the very beginning. I was inspired to create a course from my radio show, and then from there, other courses were inspired over time. But really, where we try to fill the gap and we're subject matter experts in is leadership development and with an inclusion lens. So what does that look like from developing for talent at all levels of the employee life cycle? So from emerging leaders, manager capability, all the way up to the top. And then also, again, critical skills that we all need to succeed during this time. So emotional intelligence is our newest course that comes out in like 2 months. So it's, they've been able to prove that EQ is like the number one skill that you need to learn to have when you're going through massive, massive change. And since, again, the recession and all the other things that we've been through and are still going through, we knew that skill, it was time that we have something available. So we like to build courses that we're experts in, but we're mostly focused on, we only have a handful of courses. We're not trying to build 5,000. We build what we're experts in. Our intention is to support organizations to ionize their existing content and their training programs so they can take whatever they have and other vendors that they work with, bring them on. There's no shortage of content in this world. What there's a shortage of is the activation of that content, the application, the behavior change, people actually being held accountable to doing the things that they're learning. And we just are creating an environment for that to happen with a high focus on the learner's experience for once.
I love that. I think that to me was your best statement of the entire show, that there is no shortage on content. What we're short of is activating that content. I love it. That's money. Perfect. So as we flip this back at the end of we're coming up to the final minutes of our show. It's been fast. Let's talk more specifically about ION. I think throughout this conversation, you've really helped reveal for us what motivates you as an individual and as the founder of your company and just the company itself. But what would you say is the company culture at ION, the culture that you're building or want to build? Who are the type of people that would want to come work for you?
Yeah, they are people who align with our core values, and our values are transform learning, cultivate belonging, and inspire action. So these are people who are on the path of looking at how they are holding themselves back, and they're willing to own it, and they're willing to say when they need to learn something new, and they're willing to take those steps. So a part of the interview process, I always ask everyone, I'm like the final step. I'm like, what's the hardest thing you had to overcome? And what did you learn from that experience in your life? And I want to, if I don't hear the self-realization of how that, whatever that was, has changed how they're showing up today because they didn't learn from it, then I know that this person isn't necessarily ready, because we are looking in the own mirror. We are following our own, someone says like dog food, but our own champagne, whatever it is, like we drink our own stuff, and so that's a super important. And then we also look at cultivating belonging. I ask people, what happened when you experienced the murder of George Floyd? What happened for you? So asking people how these values have potentially showed up in their life. And that's how we know these people are thinking about the world in a different way. And most people are attracted to ION because of how much we're trying to shift company cultures and inspire people. So the inspire action is always an easy one, because it's the hardest one to do, because you have to actually follow through with what you say. But most people want that, at least. So it's a matter of, we try to, through the interview process, really get to know people, not only for how well they do their skills, but also how they show up in the world and themselves. And so that's a part of how we try to find the right talent. And then once they're a part of our team and we're transitioning them into being, from a recruitment, a candidate to a hire, that's a really extraordinary time, because they are trying to learn and meet this new company, this new culture. And so what do? We do what we do at ION best. We place them into a peer learning group with 3 other new hires and 1 more experienced person on our team. And they become their first peer learning group. And then they learn a course on our platform for the first 90 days to 6 months of their experience here. So from the very, very beginning, we are giving them a support network on day 1.
I love that. My final question is, as far as learning platforms go, I think it's clear how we can apply this to companies, talent development, how it's so much easier to retain the amazing individuals that you've already got working with you rather than having to find new ones. But how has a learning platform like ION not just transformed people's work lives, but their personal lives as well? How have you seen this maybe play out and impacted individuals on a daily basis?
Oh man, the stories that we have they fill us with all the motivation and energy that we need. But so what happens is you've got the content activation. So people are learning these new things that a lot of times they are helping transform the relationship with their significant other and their kids because they're applying those skills at home. And so they're learning this new skill, and now they're like, I got to go share this with my wife or my husband or whoever it may be. And so they're sharing and excited about that. So we see that application. But on a super deep level, and this is like the core, ION means trust in Gaelic. And so our intention is to get people to build trust with those that are different. And so because our platform puts them in groups that they normally would never work with these people, they might actually have had biases against these types of people in the past. But now, because they've built this relationship and they realize how much more in common, now when they go out into the world at work or in their personal lives, they are now like, oh, when I meet this person of color or this LGBTQ plus individual, I now have this personal relationship with someone at work that identifies in that way that I actually now completely respect and have a relationship with. And it changes the brain's automatic response to want to push difference away. It now says, I actually got a feel good feeling with someone who is different. And so the changing of the neural pathways is the biggest transformation. And that it's not easy to go create new neural pathways. So once a new one is created, it's easier. The brain then wants to keep feeding that pathway. So the more examples it's given to be able to like continue to seek out different opinions and perspectives. And that's what's going to help us create a more inclusive environment. And it's going to help our companies innovate so that they can achieve the purpose for those companies, for the missions that they want to achieve is only going to happen if we can activate all the talent at all levels.
That's beautiful. It's beautiful. And I imagine we don't even have to go so far as to pick someone from a different race, religion, or, gender identification than us. Like it can even just be accountants versus, the engineering team.
Yeah.
Like, wow, I actually get along with a member from finance.
100% agree. That is, one of the first things that gets impacted, right? But the deeper one goes when we get up to those deeper layers. But just alone getting departments to work better together will do it for you.
I love it. It's beautiful. Well, thank you so much, Shavon, for spending your time with us today, for allowing us to learn from you. We truly did. I hope that you and ION Learning have nothing but success in your future.
Thank you so much. It's been so fun.
Perfect. Well, as I mentioned at the beginning of the show, this was the final show of the week, and I promised it in my video today. We're going to end the week with a bang, and we certainly did. Thank you again, Shavon Lindley. So next week, we will introduce our shows at our recap show, which normally happens Mondays at 12 o'clock, but Monday is a holiday, so we're going to be seeing you for our recap show on Tuesday at 12 o'clock Pacific. Thank you, everyone, and until then, stay safe.